Have you ever looked in the mirror and wondered, where did the time go? Maybe you notice a few more wrinkles, a little more gray in your hair, or a slower step than before. Maybe you feel a disconnect between the person you are now and the person you once were. And in a world that constantly glorifies youth, it's easy to feel like aging is something to fear, something that steals from us rather than gives. But what if I told you that everything you've been taught about aging is wrong? What if aging is not a curse but a gift? What if the very things you're resisting, the passage of time, the changes in your body, the shifts in your place in the world, are actually doorways to something deeper, something more profound than you've ever imagined? Buddhism offers a radically different perspective on growing older, one that has nothing to do with fighting against time, and everything to do with embracing it. Instead of seeing aging as a decline, what if we saw it as an unfolding, one that leads not to loss, but to wisdom, peace, and even freedom? The Buddha himself taught that suffering does not come from aging itself, but from our attachment to youth, our refusal to accept change, our fear of what comes next. And when we let go of that fear, we don't just grow old, we grow wise. In today's video, we're going to explore 5 powerful Buddhist truths that can completely transform the way you see aging. These aren't just abstract ideas, they're practical, life-changing insights that can help you find more peace, more joy, and more fulfillment in your life. Starting right now, by the end of this video, you might just see that aging isn't something happening to you. It's something happening for you. So stay with me until the very end, because I promise, what you're about to hear might just change the way you see the rest of your life. And before we dive in, if you find value in these teachings, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. If you know someone who's struggling with getting older, share this with them, because wisdom grows even greater when it's shared. And we'd love to hear from you. So leave a comment below and tell us, what's one thing about aging that you've struggled with or come to accept? Let's start a conversation that helps us all find more peace on this journey. Now, let's begin. Aging has been framed as an adversary in modern culture, a force to be resisted, defied, and delayed at all costs. Advertisements flood the media with promises of eternal youth, of serums that erase time, of diets and regimens that claim to reverse the aging process. The underlying message is clear: to age is to lose something valuable. Society conditions people to view their changing bodies as a betrayal, their graying hair as a mark of irrelevance, their slower pace as a sign of decline. This resistance creates a deep-rooted fear, a subtle but pervasive anxiety that makes every passing year feel like a battle against an inevitable fate. Yet Buddhism teaches that suffering does not arise from the changes themselves, but from our attachment to what once was, and our aversion to what is becoming. Impermanence, or anicca, is one of the foundational truths of Buddhist thought. Everything in existence is transient. Mountains erode, rivers change course, civilizations rise and fall, and even the stars that seem eternal in the night sky eventually burn out. If this is true of the grandest elements of the universe, how could it not also be true of the human body? Our youth was always meant to be temporary. The vitality we once had was never ours to keep. The smoothness of the skin, the quickness of the step, the sharpness of the eye, all of these were always in flux, changing the moment they came into being. It is not aging that causes suffering, but the illusion that we could ever be untouched by time. There is a well-known Zen story of a monk who walked through a field of cherry blossoms with his teacher. The young monk sighed as he watched the petals drift to the ground. "Master," he said, "why must beauty be so brief? The blossoms are so perfect, but they last only a moment before they are gone." His teacher smiled and asked, "If they bloomed forever, would they still be beautiful?" The monk was silent, considering the question. He realized that it was the fleeting nature of the blossoms that made them precious. Their impermanence was not a flaw, it was the very thing that gave them their meaning. Human life is no different. If we never change, if our bodies never aged, if time did not move forward, would we appreciate anything? Would we treasure moments if we thought they would last forever? A sunset is breathtaking, because we know it will soon be gone. A child's laughter is precious because we know they will grow. The warmth of a loved one's embrace is cherished because we understand that nothing is guaranteed to last. By embracing impermanence, we open ourselves to a deeper appreciation of the present. Instead of mourning the passage of time, we can celebrate the moments we are given, knowing that their transience is what makes them meaningful. The idea of a fixed, permanent self is one of the great illusions that Buddhism seeks to dismantle. People often speak of themselves in static terms. I am this kind of person. I have always been this way. I will always be this way. Yet when we look closely, we see that nothing about us has remained the same. The child we once were is gone, replaced by the adult we have become. The thoughts we had yesterday are not the same as the ones we have today. The body we inhabit now is not the same body we had 10 years ago. Science confirms this truth. The cells in our body are constantly regenerating. And over time, nearly every part of us is renewed. If nothing about us is truly permanent, then who are we really clinging to when we resist change? A person looking through old photographs may experience a strange sense of disconnection. They recognize the child or young adult in the picture, but they do not feel like that person anymore. There is a distance between who they were and who they have become. This highlights the essence of anatta, or non-self. The self is not a singular, unchanging entity, but a collection of constantly shifting experiences. Aging is not something that happens to us, it is what we are. We are not beings who move through time unchanged. We are beings who are shaped by time itself. To cling to a static identity is to fight against the very nature of existence. Suffering arises when we try to hold on to something that is meant to change. A person who believes they must always be strong will suffer when their body weakens. A person who defines themselves by their youth will struggle as they grow older. A person who ties their worth to their productivity will feel lost when they can no longer work as they once did. But when we release these attachments, suffering lessens. Instead of seeing aging as a loss, we can see it as a transformation. Instead of longing for what we once were, we can embrace what we are becoming. Suffering is an inescapable part of life. But the Buddha did not teach that suffering itself is the problem. The problem lies in our relationship to suffering. How we resist it, how we amplify it, how we let it define us. Aging brings discomfort. The body slows, joints ache, memory falters. But these things do not have to be a source of despair. They are simply experiences, neither good nor bad in themselves. It is our interpretation of them that determines whether they cause suffering. A person who believes that physical decline is the worst possible fate will experience deep distress as their abilities fade. But a person who accepts aging as natural will be able to navigate these changes with grace. The mind is a powerful force in shaping our experience. A person who constantly mourns their lost youth will be caught in an endless cycle of dissatisfaction. They will compare themselves to their younger self, lamenting every wrinkle, every limitation, every reminder that they are not who they used to be. But if they shift their perspective, they may begin to see things differently. Instead of lamenting what they have lost, they can appreciate what they have gained. Experience, wisdom, patience, deeper understanding. These are things that only come with age. Aging is not a decline, it is a deepening. Just as a tree becomes stronger with time, its roots growing deeper, its branches reaching further, so too does a person. The superficial beauty of youth fades, but it is replaced by something far more enduring. A young face may be smooth and unmarked, but an old face carries the lines of a life well lived. Every wrinkle is a story. Every gray hair is a lesson learned. In many cultures, elders are seen as a source of wisdom. They are the storytellers, the guides, the ones who have walked the path before, and can offer insight to those who follow. Yet in societies that worship youth, this reverence has been lost. Instead of valuing the elderly, many view them as burdens, as people who are no longer useful. This is a tragic misunderstanding. The later years of life are not meant to be a time of irrelevance, but a time of sharing, of reflection, of passing down what has been learned. Aging is inevitable, but suffering through it is not. Buddhism offers a way to meet aging with peace instead of fear, with acceptance instead of resistance. When we let go of the illusion of permanence, When we release our attachment to a fixed identity, when we stop seeing change as something to be feared, we free ourselves. The struggle against time is a battle that can never be won. But when we stop fighting, we realize that there was never a battle to begin with, only the natural unfolding of life. Moment by moment, the practice of mindfulness is a gateway to freedom, particularly as we navigate the aging process. The human mind has a tendency to dwell on the past, replaying regrets, missed opportunities, or mistakes. At the same time, it projects into the future, generating anxieties about what is to come, whether it be physical decline, loss of independence, or the unknown that awaits beyond life itself. This mental chatter creates suffering, pulling us away from the present moment, which is the only place where life actually unfolds. Mindfulness, or sati in Pali, is the practice of being fully aware of the present. Without judgment or resistance, it is the ability to witness each moment as it is, with clarity and acceptance. Aging brings with it a natural slowing down, an opportunity to cultivate mindfulness more deeply. When we are young, we often rush from one moment to the next, our minds filled with ambition, planning, and striving. But with age comes the realization that time is finite, that there is no longer the illusion of endless years stretching ahead. This awareness can create either anxiety or gratitude, depending on how we engage with it. The practice of mindfulness teaches us to choose gratitude, to savor each experience, to bring full awareness to even the simplest of actions. Walking, eating, breathing. Instead of seeing time as slipping away, we begin to experience it fully, moment by moment. A common misconception about mindfulness is that it requires sitting in silence for hours, meditating in perfect stillness. While formal meditation is valuable, mindfulness is ultimately about presence in everyday life. Washing dishes, drinking tea, listening to the sound of the wind. These are all opportunities to practice. A person who eats without mindfulness may finish an entire meal without tasting a single bite, lost in thought. But a person who eats with full awareness experiences the texture, the aroma, the warmth, the sensation of nourishment. This simple shift transforms ordinary moments into something sacred. There is a story of a Zen master who was asked what his greatest spiritual practice was. He replied, "When I eat, I eat. When I walk, I walk. When I sleep, I sleep." The student was puzzled. "But isn't that what everyone does?" he asked. The master shook his head and said, "No, when most people eat, they're thinking about other things. When they walk, their minds are elsewhere. When they sleep, they're lost in dreams of the past and future." True mindfulness means being exactly where you are. This wisdom becomes especially important in aging, as it allows us to fully inhabit the body and mind as they are, rather than as we wish them to be. The aches in the joints, the slower reflexes, the forgetting of a word mid-sentence, these can either be sources of frustration or simply experiences to be observed with acceptance. A person who resists these changes suffers. A person who meets them with awareness and patience finds peace. This is the difference between growing old anxiously and growing old gracefully. Breathing is one of the most powerful anchors to the present moment. The breath is always with us, always available, and yet we rarely pay attention to it. The simple act of mindful breathing, following the inhale, feeling the air fill the lungs, observing the natural pause before the exhale, brings the mind out of its wandering and into direct experience. It is a reminder that we are alive, here, now. In Buddhism, there is a practice called anapanasati, or mindfulness of breathing, which is considered a direct path to liberation. The Buddha himself taught that observing the breath with full awareness calms the mind, steadies the heart, and leads to deep insight. There is a well-known Buddhist meditation practice that involves contemplating impermanence with each breath. On the inhale, one silently thinks, "I am alive." On the exhale, "This moment is passing." This simple reflection instills both appreciation for life and an acceptance of its ever-changing nature. It teaches us that just as each breath comes and goes, so too do all experiences, pleasure and pain, youth and old age, beginnings and endings. Karma is often misunderstood as a system of punishment or reward. But in reality, it is simply the law of cause and effect. Every action, thought, and intention we put into the world shapes our experience. Aging is a reflection of this principle. The habits we cultivated in youth determine the quality of our later years, both physically and mentally. A person who lived with kindness, generosity, and patience will find peace as they grow older, while a person who lived with selfishness, resentment, and greed will find themselves burdened with regret. This is not because of divine judgment, but because the mind carries its own imprint forward. One of the most profound aspects of karma is that it is always being created in the present, no matter what has come before. We always have the power to shape our experience through our actions now. If we spent years living in fear, we can begin cultivating courage. If we have held onto grudges, we can choose to forgive. If we have been disconnected from others, we can open our hearts to connection. In this way, karma is not something that happens to us. It is something we participate in, moment by moment. Small acts of kindness have a ripple effect that extends far beyond what we can see. A simple smile, a moment of patience, a gentle word, these create harmony, both within us and in those we interact with. There is a story of a man who, as a young child, was once helped by an elderly woman who gave him food when he was hungry. Decades later, he became a doctor and devoted his life to healing others. He never forgot that small act of kindness, and it shaped the way he lived. The woman never knew the full impact of her gesture, but her karma lived on in the goodness he spread. This is the power of right action. It extends beyond the individual and becomes part of the larger flow of life. Living with intention in old age is one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves. The world often sees aging as a time of decline, a period of life where one becomes less relevant, less useful, but in reality, these years are an opportunity for deep spiritual practice. Without the distractions of youthful ambition, there is space for reflection, for wisdom, for sharing knowledge with others. Many of the world's great spiritual teachers were elders, their insights sharpened by time and experience. The Dalai Lama, Thich Nhat Hanh, and countless Buddhist masters have spoken of aging not as something to be feared, but as a profound and sacred journey toward liberation. By integrating mindfulness, acceptance, and ethical living, we cultivate a peaceful and meaningful aging process. Acceptance does not mean passivity. It means fully meeting life as it is, without resistance. Detachment does not mean indifference. It means letting go of what we cannot control while remaining engaged with what we can. Mindfulness allows us to be fully present for the time we have, rather than wasting it in regret or worry. Ethical living ensures that we leave behind a legacy of kindness, not just in memory but in the tangible effects of our actions. There is a story of an elderly woman who, despite her frailty, tended a small garden outside her home. Neighbors often saw her humming softly as she worked, her hands planting flowers with care. A young man, curious about her serenity, asked, "What keeps you so content, even as you grow older?" She smiled and replied, "I nurture what I have, accept what I don't, and find joy in the simple act of living." Her happiness was not tied to youth or external success, but to a deep inner harmony cultivated over years of practice. Aging is not the loss of something, it is the gaining of perspective. Each wrinkle is a lesson learned. Each gray hair is a story told. Each breath is a reminder that we are still here, still able to love, to learn, to be present. Instead of seeing aging as a diminishing, we can see it as a deepening. Instead of fearing the years ahead, we can approach them with curiosity, gratitude, and grace. The Buddha's teachings offer not only a way to age peacefully, but a way to live fully, at any stage of life. If you've made it this far, you're already seeing aging differently than you did before. Maybe you've started to realize that your wrinkles are not signs of something lost, but evidence of a life well lived. Maybe you see now that your changing body is not a betrayal, but a faithful companion that has carried you through every joy and hardship. Maybe you've started to understand that aging doesn't take away your value, it simply reveals a deeper one. The Buddha's teachings remind us that life is always changing, always flowing, always evolving, and when we stop resisting that change, when we embrace impermanence instead of fearing it, something incredible happens. We find peace. We stop clinging to what was, and start appreciating what is. We stop fearing the future and start living fully in the present. Aging is not about fading away. It's about growing into something even greater. It's about deepening your wisdom, strengthening your compassion, and embracing the freedom that comes when you no longer have to prove anything to anyone. It's about realizing that your worth has never been in how young you look, or how fast you move. It has always been in who you are. So the next time you look in the mirror, don't see time as something that has stolen from you. See it as a teacher, one that has given you experience, understanding, and a perspective that only comes with age. See it as a journey, not toward decline, but toward awakening. And if this message resonated with you, I want you to take action. Like this video to let us know you found it valuable. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Because no one should have to face aging with fear when wisdom can guide them instead. Subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new insight. And most importantly, join the conversation below. What's one lesson aging has taught you? What's one fear you're learning to let go of? Let's support each other in walking this path with grace and wisdom. Thank you for being here, for being part of this journey. Aging isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of something even more profound. And I hope you continue to walk this path with an open heart, a curious mind, and a spirit that grows brighter with every passing year. Until next time, be well, be present, and embrace the wisdom that is unfolding within you.